morning and welcome back to the Dogs and Deadlifts podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Rose. Today we have some great guests lined up, Queenslanders as well. We have Brian and Peter from CEN Nutrition. Welcome, guys.
How you going?
Hey guys.
Dan?
G'day, guys.
Yeah, I'm fantastic. I just mentioned earlier, I quickly ran out, did the school run and grabbed a coffee to get me across the line. And here we are. So thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, no worries, Dan. Thanks for the invite. Have you had a duo on before?
No, I don't believe at this stage. Oh, we've got a first.
Yeah, we might have to take our cues.
That's exactly right.
Try not talk over each other. So
No, look, all good. We'll just jump straight into it if that's all right, guys. I know you guys are pretty busy with a lot going on. So, can you give us a little bit of rundown about, I suppose, first about yourselves, and then we'll talk about the company and how things got started.
Yeah, so probably 6 or 7 years ago, Peter and I sort of struck up a friendship over horses, and I've got a scientist background with the government and just being a lab rat, and Peter had a horse with a trainer that kept getting sick. And we asked the trainer, hey, what's going on with like the feed and everything? And lo and behold, we had a look what they were feeding. It was just overload grain, cooking oil. And we were a bit shocked, and we thought, no, something's not right here in this industry. And that's about 6 or 7 years ago in the horse industry.
Yeah. I'm from a sales background, Dan, so I've been in sales for about 13 years as well. And as Brian mentioned, we struck up a friendship through the trainer, and I've always been interested in sort of natural health and things like that. And we got the trainer to do a blood test for that particular horse. And obviously Brian being a scientist, it was sort of music to his ears. And
second nature.
Second nature. And from memory, I mean, this is a while ago. Do you remember what was out with that particular horse?
It just kept having those sort of inflammation and infection like markers high, and you can get a good snapshot from the blood, but you go back into your nutrition trying to look at what suits the physiology of the horse mainly and what they were feeding. What we found out was, they weren't feeding the right sort of nutrient profile for a horse to flourish internally.
So we weren't as clever sort of back then as what we are now. So basically, the goal was, well, let's find the most intelligent person / nutritionist in the world to let us know what the trainer, was feeding that was incorrect, and how do we basically feed something that's correct. And that was a probably journey over probably 6 to 9 months it took to go back and forth. And long story short, so we don't sort of bore your listeners, she sort of said, look, 95% of what that trainer was feeding to the horse is incorrect, and 5% is correct. And she said, most likely you will not be able to get all that sort of feed that you need in Australia, because it just doesn't exist. And that's how the business pretty much started. It was by, sort of pure coincidence.
Yeah, just helping a sick horse at the start, and then it was trialing and error with products that we made or sourced, and then our friends started using them and say, hey, can we recommend these to a friend? We're like, this is just a hobby. And then the demand grew. We got that trust, and now we're Australia-wide, international, exporting, and and we get results in the end with our products. So.
Yeah, for sure. So, we start, obviously, you started with horses. So how did the dogs pop up?
Yeah, well, when there's a dog at feeding time for a horse, looking at what the horse is getting fed, it started with the oil. So the CEN oil is a cold pressed flaxseed or linseed oil with antioxidants. So really pure, unprocessed, no chemicals, no fillers. And what the dogs were doing were just licking the empty container that the horses were getting, and then the horse owners noticed that their dogs had better skin, coat condition, less irritation. Some of them took their flea collars off, and they started asking us, hey, can we feed this to our dogs?
We got a bit lucky, Dan, because a lot of our horse clients have dogs as well. So it was almost, look, I would say probably 80%. I would go that high, and I sort of said, as Brian mentioned, can we feed the horse oil to the dog? And it was a natural progression where we sort of had a big clientele that we didn't know that even existed, that we could sort of, you know, pretty much sort of cross the products over. So like Brian said, it ended up being the horse product was fed to the dog, and then some of the owners for the horses said, look, my dog has a gut issue. You know, does your horse gut product suit the dog? And we said, look,
No.
not really. So then we were forced, you know, we were
Forced to make one.
We were forced to make one, and then the joint issues was how the active came around, and then we've got the collagen now as well. So a lot of the ingredients we sort of mix within, you know, within both products, but there are a lot, well, probably half that are dog specific as well, that we, you know, that we sort of modify the formulas for.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I suppose, you know, I wanted to ask you, and I'd be direct, you know, with so much confusion, I was going to swear then, I'll hold back on my swearing today.
You've been warned, Dan.
So, you know, with so much confusion out there in regards to, you know, we'll talk obviously about dogs specifically, you know, you know, I often see people spending, you know, hours and hours looking, researching, you know, going into the pet store, and they're just looking at all bits and pieces in regards to food and supplements, and they're just confused. You know, there's no doubt about it. They're confused. So I suppose this is a question, you know, what is your sort of take on, you know, I suppose feeding dogs, but also the, you know, in regards to supplements as well? It could be a personal opinion, I suppose, on this one.
Well, just from experience and crossing over from horses to dogs, treating the dog in front of you as an individual, don't look at what your friend's feeding and go, oh, it's going to suit them. It's just like Peter and I, he'll gain weight off some fast food, but I probably won't. So is that a different microbiome? Is that a different genetic structure? And it's what, as you said, there's confusion everywhere, and we got to just feel comfortable with that in ourselves to trial something on your dog. If it's suiting your dog and you're getting the results, you stay on that and try not to, try and get through the noise that is in the industry and go on hype from another, say, a product trying to convince you to use that. So
because
from my end then, sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, mate, you know, there's so much marketing in the, obviously, and probably not too much transparency in the pet food industry and supplement range, you know, but, you know, we've got to sort of wade our way through that.
Dan, the easiest way to put it, and I'll keep it really short and simple, is if you're a company or even a person, if you've got nothing to hide, then you've got nothing to worry about. So from our end with CEN for dogs is we want to be as transparent as possible in terms of we list all the ingredients that we use. We, you know, it's basically black and white. You know, if someone calls us and wants a direct question, we're happy to answer it. We, you know, we say that our oil is cold pressed. You know, if you look at, say, our competitors in a fish oil market, there's a few simple checks, you know, like your listeners can do. First check is check whether the fish oil has been cold pressed. If you notice 99% on the market, they don't mention the extraction process. And, you know, there might be a valid reason for that, or there might be something, you know, that they're trying to hide. And what I'm getting at is that any product that's been modified and loses its natural state is no longer how it was obviously created by nature. You know, some companies obviously put fillers in products through products to make it seem like you're feeding, you know, like a little bit, but you're getting so much more supply. So we don't use any of these carriers. It's purely pure product. A lot of our supplements, you know, pretty much every one of them, we use human grade ingredients in terms of like the turmeric and like the rose hips and things like that. The collagen, you know, the pro and prebiotics are sort of dog specific. So we try to do is source the best products. Doesn't matter if they're the most expensive products, because we want a product that works, and we want to have a place in a market that's just totally different to what everyone else is doing. And end of the day, if we get results, then obviously the clients are gonna be happy and will keep coming back.
Yeah. Look, and I agree. And, you know, in like, once again, in a world that we live in today, I believe transparency, you know, and hence why we're talking on the podcast today about, you know, bits and pieces is super important. And for, you know, for me to, you know, to align myself with a company or you know, a particular product, I want to know exactly what's in it, you know, and the people behind it as well. So I definitely feel that you know, the lack of transparency in you know, the pet food and supplement industry is you know, very concerning.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And just furthermore to what Peter said, like we've got clients that feed raw, they feed fresh, like raw and fresh, even kibble, just depending on their lifestyle and the time constraints. And what we're trying to achieve is a good, like trying to improve that nutrient profile with good quality supplements, and then see that response in their dog, or see the response the dog can give. Yeah, when filling in the gaps that their base diet doesn't fulfill.
Yeah, for sure. And look, you know, I'm not going to get into a, you know, as we can, you know, kibble versus raw or fresh. You know, my obviously preference is raw or fresh. You know, however, it just doesn't suit some people, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Well, as a company too, Dan, sort of one last point on your question is that it's not about selling products or saying we're the best, you're the worst. What our sort of theory is we want to educate the end user. So if you educate the end user, you know, you try to share your knowledge that we've gained. I mean, you know, we work with Dr. Patton in America, who's a PhD nutritionist, to help us develop the dog products. We work with Dr. Getty in America to help us with the horse products. So we're trying to get these most intelligent people in the world that have spent their career, obviously, researching, learning this, and that knowledge that we've gained at CEN, we want to share that through education. And look, people might take that information and they might, you know, take it and buy another company's products. That's fine. You know, it's not a problem. We're not greedy. You know, good karma comes back. We feel that when we educate, people are going to go, well, you know, these guys are actually trying to help me, which we are. And then if they decide to buy our products, you know, that's well and great. But if they don't, at least they've learned something from us, and they'll share it with their friends. And then at the end of the day, it's going to benefit the animal, and that's what we're about.
For sure. And that's what, you know, for me, doing this podcast, I said to someone only just this morning, if someone takes one little piece of information, they listen to my podcast for, you know, 20 to 40 minutes, and they take one little piece of information that can either benefit their dog in regards to weight loss or increasing their dog's performance on the sporting field, so be it. You know what I mean? Like, fantastic. I've done my my little part, you know. So I absolutely agree with you. Education in this space is certainly the key, you know, to, yeah, look, at the end of the day, we still need to pay bills, but, you know, like you said, everything comes around, you know.
And look, if you're comfortable with your product, if you know that your product's good, and even yourself, you know, like with, you know, with the work that you're doing, I mean, you're spreading the good word. Obviously, people are going to, you know, listen to you because you're doing, you know, you're doing a very good service to the, you know, to the community in general. So naturally, people are going to flock to that because everyone's hungry for information. You mentioned there's a lot of confusion. We're trying to, you know, sort out this confusion from, you know, from fiction to fact. And, you know, if you can educate, plus if your products, you know, are obviously getting results, you've ticked a lot of boxes there.
Yeah. So let's, I suppose, jump into, you know, we'll talk about your oil. Yeah. You know, obviously you mentioned it just briefly, but can you give us, you know, I suppose, take a little deep dive into your oil in particular, or even we can talk, you know, I don't like to name competitors, but, you know, the differences and, you know, the benefits there, that someone, or, you know, someone can even look out for when they're considering a supplement. Yeah.
Yeah, so with the CEN oil, obviously cold press, no chemical extraction compared to a lot of, say, the cooking oils on the market. You're going through that plant-based source of omega-3 as opposed to an animal source giving you the end products, the EPA, DHA. There's a lot of research around in the fish oil industry, trying to, I don't know, it tries to drag down the plant-based source of omega-3s through that conversion, but with a lot of this research and just putting the scientist's hat on, in the end, in all the conclusions, it does say further research is required. It's very under-researched the area. There's no set omega-3 level base or recommended base for dogs, and even in humans as well. Some of the research coming out for fish oil is a bit alarming because of the vested interests that go on. And we felt comfortable going down the plant-based option, using the dog's physiology or using the horse's physiology to use their own enzymes and drive that end point, and then get the benefit through there. And what we see is really good results through their skin and coat condition, less inflammation, and yeah, it just provides an additional calorie source for the dog, particularly in performance dogs. It can really give that sort of cool energy source, which can be used for stamina because there's no lactic acid due to the no sugar and starch or carbohydrate portion. So we're hitting two sort of major parts, particularly in a performance dog, to help them perform better.
Just what popped into my head just now, Brian, was often, I've worked on the shop floor in the pet stores, and often I see people just ducking down to their local chemist and grabbing some pills and just or some capsules and putting it in as well. Can we talk about the open the craziness that potentially that is as well?
Well, we're not even adverse to fish oil in such, like, looking for a trusted source is good, but even feeding the whole fish like sardines and that is probably a better way, and ensuring a more natural way with less, like, say, heavy metals and toxins. And in that sort of space, the research that we keep coming across in that whole thing, that whole sort of space, is it's not fully conclusive. You need fish oil to drive those pathways or to get to that end point. And being a less processed plant-based source of oil is a more natural way of giving it to the dog. But also, if people do like the theory of the fish oil way, they can take that on.
And also versus I suppose coconut oils made a bit of an emergence in the last probably we'll say number of years. More people throwing some coconut oil in there as well. So
yeah, so the difference with, though, sorry to cut you off, the difference between our oil and coconut oil doesn't contain any omega-3 or omega-6, and it's mainly omega-9, which the dog can make, and it's mainly saturated fat as well. So if you're going to choose a fat source in your diet, we like to get a good omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, and that's where our oil comes into play.
Then I'd like to make a point more sort of along the side of performance, maybe for your performance listeners. So there are two kinds of people. So obviously some people feed the tablets, like you said, for the omega-3, and then you've got the other side where they might feed fat for performance. And I think this is a bit of an elephant in a room, where a lot of people don't understand that actually fat, and I mean a healthy fat, is actually healthy for dogs. And what I mean by that is, so dogs are pretty much the same as horses in terms of the muscle fibers that they have. They've actually got 3 muscle fibers. So a dog has slow oxidative, they've got fast oxidative, and they've got fast glycolytic. And what that means is that you need to feed a particular food/nutrition to feed those muscle fibers. So let's just say the slow oxidative are for when you're walking your dog. When you get into the fast glycolytic, that's where they need the starch and carbohydrates, because that's a very fast way of those muscle fibers contracting and relaxing. Fat, basically, in our opinion, is the missing link, because you're feeding both the slow and the fast. So that's actually giving you like an energy source, which doesn't build much lactic acid. It doesn't make the dog fizzy. It's got 60% omega-3, so you're getting all those omega-3 benefits, as well as you're getting a big energy hit. And if you've got a dog that's got a gut problem, you can reduce the kibble or the carbohydrates in a diet and replace that with fat in a very safe source. To give you an idea, 10 mil of oil is about 30 mil to 35 mil of kibble. That grams. That's how energy dense fat is. So if we feed the correct muscle fibers, obviously with the right portion of fat, the right portion obviously of protein, the right portion of carbohydrates, that's where you're going to get a really big advantage in performance, rather than just saying, well, I'm going to feed a kilogram of raw, or I'm just going to go a scoop of kibble. You know what I mean? I'm getting really specific.
Yeah. No, I love it. Well, it's actually, it's funny, Peter, because this morning I woke up very early and I was working on part of my online program, and I was talking about the difference between anaerobic and aerobic based exercises, and the obviously we talk about the ATP and the that energy source. The course that I'm working on is very basic, but just people understanding that that anaerobic, or that high intensity burst of energy of up to sort of 30 to 60 seconds versus the slow marathon type runners that uses a different energy source.
Well said. And out of those 3 muscle fibers, then 2 of them are aerobic and only 1 is anaerobic. So the slow oxidative, fast oxidative, they're both aerobic, which is fat. So that's best fueled by fat. And then obviously the fast glycolytic, that's obviously anaerobic, and that's where your starch and sort of sugars come in.
Yeah, and it's all your overall energy system all comes from nutrition.
Correct. It's like, as an example, then, like if you've got a brand new Mercedes Benz, and Mercedes have sort of recommended you've got to put unleaded 98 premium into it, and let's just say you're feeling a little bit lazy, or you're a bit tight for cash, and you go putting in an ethanol blend of 91. I mean, that Mercedes, for the first week it's going to start running okay, but if you keep putting that fuel in it, it's not recommended to run that car. Eventually the engine's going to seize.
Oh, 100%. And also, I love my analogies as well, but gone are the days, this is just from my training as well, gone are the days that we sit down the night before we go to play footy and just carb load. Do you know what I mean? Like just,
I can remember, Dan, I used to run half marathons, and the morning we get, or that night before we get everyone together, get all your pasta, just get this carb loading. It's gone.
Yeah,
we don't do that anymore.
That's exactly right. I think I was introduced when I was going through a lot of running and stuff like that as well. We'll talk about human just for a moment. Like the keto-based diet, the primal. I think it was Primal Endurance was one of the first books that I read about. Getting rid of carbs and getting out there and doing a good solid aerobic base work. Without my heart rate peaking over, say, 120 back. I think it was super low. But did I drop kilos? Hell yes, I dropped kilos. Got off the rubbish, all the carbs, and I was lean and fit. So, taking those principles and let's take them to our dogs, whether they be, looking to lose weight or gain performance. We need to really educate ourselves and learn and definitely gone to the days of loading up, of, let's just say, dry, full of carbs and fillers the night before a race or a night before the event. So getting smarter about how we apply these things to our dogs in a performance world, but also in a weight loss world as well.
Yeah, 100%, Dan. It's getting that physiology of the dog to burn that fuel type, that fat fuel type, which is more efficient, and doing the adequate training as well in their lead up runs, just to burn that fat portion of the diet. And if you increase that fat portion, you'll promote that in a better way than the carbohydrates and the sugars.
Yeah, for sure.
Just one point then. Some people think, oh, geez, fat, like my dog's fat already and I'm going to feed it more fat. It's going to make it even more fat. That's not totally correct. I think there's a big misconception, probably especially in America, because I don't think the labeling sort of requirements are as strict as what they are in the United States. And what I'm getting at is the water-soluble carbohydrates. And that's not disclosed in a lot of the feedbacks. And what that means is water-soluble carbohydrates is the sugars and starches. So once the dog eats the kibble, once that kibble gets converted, it gets converted into water-soluble carbohydrates. And that depending on the kibble, it could be from 30% up to 60%. So if you can imagine some of the cheap ones that are at 60% in WSC, that's 60 grams of sugar per 100 grams of kibble. And over a long period of time, that's going to cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, look, I agree, and I'm not sure if you listened to one of the podcasts I did, but I was talking with Jay Jack from the States, and we're talking about how we're talking specifically about performance and strength and conditioning in the dog world, how he feels that we are, almost 30 years behind right now with our dogs compared to our humans, and we may not quite be 30 years, but we are a little bit, we are a little bit behind in regards to our thinking and our plan and our strategy, but hence why we're doing this type of stuff to help educate. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I think we've come to an understanding of like dog nutrition and training probably in leaps and bounds in the last 5 to 10 years.
Mhm.
But it's also the involvement of human health to apply those principles, like even with horses and dogs,
Mhm.
and knowing, yeah, as we touched on, the fuel types, that whole gut microbiome driving the immune system, the gut brain axis with temperament, and trying to feed that properly through proper nutrition, then getting a better overall health for the dog.
And I think there's a change happening too, Dan. We've got, we've had recently sort of vets approach us about working with us to educate their staff, to educate themselves so they can educate their clients. So it is all changing. Look, to give you an example, if you go back sort of, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, most dogs weren't 2, 3, 4, 5 years old coming into the vets, with arthritis, which we think stems from a leaky gut. And that plays a nutritional point of view. So dogs are more and more frequently visiting the vets. And, the question we have to ask ourselves is, if we're feeding correctly, why are the animals getting sicker and sicker? Or like they're more frequent on antibiotics, they've got candida infections, there's bacterial, viral, there's all this stuff that's going on. And we seem to think it's stemming from nutrition. And it's not that the owners are not doing their best, it's just lack of education. They think, well, it's a big brand, they know what they're doing, we'll just give it this. But end of the day, there are profits involved as well, and every company, well, maybe not every, but a lot of companies, especially the multinationals, it's all about the bottom dollar. Where we try to go, well, look, you need to make a profit, but you also need to make sure that that dog is going to be as healthy as possible, rather than, coming into the last 2 years of its life, and then you're spending thousands of dollars on vet bills because you've had poor nutrition for 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, for sure. I just lost my train of thought then, but look, I'm 100% agree with you. We're seeing a big trend in, obviously, of education. You know, But that's what I was going to talk about was, you mentioned about leaky gut. I wanted to have a bit of a chat about that, and how you have developed a product, obviously, around that, and some of the benefits you're seeing around that, if that's cool.
We've actually got a podcast on that on the CEN Nutrition webpage too. So sorry to do the plug.
All good.
Halfway through it. We will go through it. So yeah, there is a podcast about 15 minutes, and it is something that the vets were really passionate about, that we sort of caught up with last week. What they said is that they're not really taught how to diagnose it just yet. It is something that's getting a lot of publicity, a lot of research in the human field, but for animals, it's something that's just sort of been swept sort of to the side a little bit. So we are sort of flying blind a little bit where there's no conclusive sort of diagnosis for it. But Brian will go into probably some of the points that we sort of covered with the vets and a podcast too.
Yeah, basically, they did say that like IBS or irritable bowel syndrome or anything gut related in terms of an adverse effect to that intestinal wall due to medications, toxins, just a real upset microbiome, anything that is affecting that, and then allowing the intestinal wall to, like anything from the environment that shouldn't be into the blood can pass through, and trying to ensure that that wall can be repaired as quickly as possible if they're on medications is probably the basis around leaky gut.
And as an example, like let's just say, we had one of the stories that the vets were sort of saying, they had like a 4-year-old dog. I can't remember what the breed was, and it had really, really severe arthritis. And I mean, it's like us humans say, you know, if we're 30 and we got really severe arthritis just out of nowhere, we sort of ask the question, well, look, we're too young to have arthritis. And what the research we've come across is, as Brian mentioned, is that bacteria basically escapes out of the gut, gets into the bloodstream, and possibly can get into the joints, and that's what's causing the actual arthritis. It's not old age or lack of calcium. It's just bacteria being in the blood where it's not supposed to be.
Yeah, it's one of the puzzle pieces just to tick off. So ensuring that gut health first, and then if there's still arthritis, then look at other ways, whether it's an injury or genetics involved. But not 9 times out of 10, but the majority of the time, if you can get that gut health right to ensure that intestinal lining, it just ticks another box, and then you can move on to the next sort of puzzle piece to try and fix in the dog.
Yeah. So I just wanted to backtrack a little bit, if that's okay. So, you know, you mentioned, you know, you got bloods done on the horse. You know, are you seeing people going to their vets and asking for bloods? And you know, if their vet is, you know, obviously some vets are going to be open to this and some are not, right? You know, so you know, what sort of stuff are we looking for? I suppose a bit more specific to Brian. What are we looking to test for? If, you know, if our vet goes, what do you want a blood test for? Oh, nah, blah blah blah. You know, I don't think
I'll try and keep it in layman.
Yeah.
I'll try and keep it in layman terms. So basically, a normal screen will just be the hematology and biochemistry, and that gives you a snapshot of what's going on in your dog. So you can assess like liver or kidney health from there. You can see the inflammation, infection, if it's anemic or not. So it'll give you a nice overview of what's happening inside the dog. But nutrition-wise, you can't say, oh, it's got high calcium. That means the dog's got too much calcium, because calcium is also in the bone. So you're measuring the blood, and if it's high there, is it low in the bone, or is it high in the bone? So there's all this normalization within the dog's body. So if the calcium's low in the blood, it'll get some calcium from the bone and even itself up. So that doesn't mean there is a calcium deficiency. Yeah, so in terms of nutrition, a blood test won't tell you what's deficient, like definitely, but in terms of whole body health, your body systems of the dog, even the muscle enzymes. So if there's inflammation in the muscles, you've overtrained, you can really see those values. So I could go into the specific tests. So like creatine kinase is an enzyme that's released when muscle is damaged. You get that in a response to exercise, but if you don't recover correctly, then that enzyme is higher for a longer time. So then you've got a muscle issue, or you're overtraining that muscle. So blood tests are really useful. As a scientist for over 15 years, you've got to not single out a particular parameter. So what I mean by that is you look for patterns rather than like, oh, that's high and nothing else is high. People can overread bloods, but having a history, so say you took a blood test every 6 months of your dog when they're really healthy, it's probably a good practice, because then you can refer to what is normal for your dog, and then when they're sick, then you can see what a sick profile is, and then you can adjust the management to that.
Yeah. You know, I suppose this is a very open question as well, but, you know, as I mentioned, not all vets are going to interpret those bloods the same. You know, would that be a fair comment?
Yeah, and we do notice that as well. So it's what they're comfortable with or what they've been educated in. I have called out in the horse industry, vets over medicating or picking out things, but whether that's just to cover themselves in the end, and they're not confident, and I can't sort of comment either way, but find a vet that you're comfortable with, maybe leaning on that holistic side. We're building up a bit of a database of them, even in Queensland, that keep contacting us and getting us going down our theory of nutrition and health for dogs, and getting really good results through that. Because medications, these vets are saying to us, medications are fantastic when it's used for a short time to get on top of a condition, but chronic medication use is just playing havoc with the dog's microbiome, with the dog's general health, and the side effects are too great. So they want to find that natural alternative and then feed better on a daily basis to limit that medication use.
Yeah, for sure. And so look, and sometimes, like I've got a very good vet, but some vets are, I almost compare to like your GP that you go and see, right? They write you out a script, you're there for 10 minutes, see you later, So, finding a holistic vet, or even, a specialist in this space at this point in time is a little bit challenging. I won't lie, but I think we're making progress, and more are getting more, as you mentioned, a little bit more open, and developing a database that you might have to do an online consult, or have your bloods taken and then sent off, etc. But it's well worth tracking and keeping keep monitoring it, like I said, whether it be on a 6-monthly basis.
Yeah, you're 100% right, Dan. What is normal for one dog may not be normal for another dog. So it's really important that when your dog is healthy, probably getting that blood test done, looking at the parameters and saying, okay, the dog is healthy. Then down the track, if they do get sick, get another one, and then you can see the degree of change. And each year, obviously, as a dog grows up, there's different biological and physiology changes within them. But yeah, it's basically being your own scientist and sort of getting that database of results for them and then comparing.
For sure. I suppose, moving on just a little bit, something that has come up just recently for me. So it's more specifically around performance dogs at the moment. Let's just say we're doing a high intensity workout session, feeding a dog a small amount of kibble, also a supplement, to within sort of 10 to 15 minutes of that exercise ceasing, trying to obviously get some of the nutrition and some of the supplements into the bloodstream as quickly as possible. Obviously, there's a little bit of perception around there, bloat, etc. Would love your take on that type of strategy as well.
Well, I think you're trying to replenish the sort of the glycogen stores that you've used in that high intensity exercise. Yeah, is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So 100% agree with you about that.
There's no insulin.
Yeah,
there's no insulin response in that little window. So yeah, the glycogen can go back through into the muscles quicker.
Correct. In terms of the supplementation, we're probably on a view of something a little bit different, where we would like to supplement, whether it's vitamins, minerals, amino acids, or so forth, on a daily basis in smaller amounts, rather than doing one big hit and going, well, geez, the body's got to absorb this big shock now.
Yep.
So the theory that obviously that we've sort of gone upon with Dr. Pat, who I've worked with, is that daily supplementation, slow and steady wins the race, is going to be much more beneficial than a one-off thing. So, as an example, if your performance dog doesn't drink enough water, and if you're not getting the adequate electrolytes or sodium chloride, it's going to be dehydrated during the event. And by you giving the electrolyte product after the event, it's too late then. The dog's already dehydrated, and you're sort of chasing your tail, which affects your performance, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah. It's still a good practice to electrolyte well after an event, but electrolyte pre-event to ensure that hydration and fluid within the cells is equally important. And we see it rife through the horse industry as well, and with performance horses. It's a performance advantage if you're hydrated properly. So it would be a crossover into the dog performance.
For sure. I know that you have a hydration or electrolyte supplement for horses. Is that, have you got something for the dogs, or is that compatible?
Yeah, it's not totally compatible, and we're doing more research with our nutritionists, and there will be a product later this year, because we get that question every week. Can we feed the horse electrolyte to our dogs? But we have a pure product for the horses, so like no sugar, no chemicals, no fillers, and that's a very successful supplement that we sell Australia wide.
we're just picky, and like if we're going to release like a horse product or a dog product, we normally trial it for 6 months before it sort of goes to market. And look, you know, some companies might say, yeah, it's fine for your dog, it's fine for the horse, and look, it probably is, but we want to develop something there's no
better,
you know, like you know, yeah, it's like she's all good. It's like, well, yeah, 100%. This is designed for, you know, for dog only.
Yeah,
every dog.
Oh, look, for sure. You know, like one of my dogs just recently, so I've had him for 3 months, and he's come up from Tasmania to Queensland. You know, he, he is struggling with the climate up here. There's no doubt about it. You know, so I've just got to, in regards to hydration, training processes, I've got to ease him into it. You know, we've got to, got to crawl, let him acclimatise. You know, he's been here for almost 4 months. You know, my expectations are certainly not too high at this point in time, because it's middle of summer, come from Tasmania. You know.
Yeah, and look, and he's probably been possibly on a different diet, and you know, if you're going to go sort of cold turkey with what you're feeding, you know, his gut health might not gel to what he was fed in Tasmania, and then there's the stress of the travel. You know, he's gone from a cool temperature to a sweaty temperature with with humidity in Queensland. So there's all these factors that causes stress. You know, that puts pressure on your gut microbiome. You know, that's where your immune system is. This is where where illness can happen.
Yeah, for sure. I suppose, obviously we've talked about your oil. Can we jump into, I suppose, some of your other products that you're obviously offering for dogs now, and a little bit about them. Let's start with the collagen.
Oh yeah,
yeah, that's cool.
yeah, all good, all good.
So we use a human grade collagen, Dan, which is bovine and fish, like sort of marine. And we use both because the two different collagens have different advantages. So we use both. And why that product was developed is, like, as an example, for one of your sort of listeners of feeding kibble. Kibble is going to be deficient in the 17 amino acids that the collagen has, or if it's going to have any amino acids, it's very low. So over time, that dog's going to be deficient in those 17 amino acids. As it gets older, obviously, if we don't have those amino acids in the body, the body can't sort of repair and sort of heal. So we need, especially glycine and proline, which are around about 50% of collagen. They're the two main amino acids that us humans and dogs need to repair. And unfortunately, kibble, even raw, or even sort of premixed feeds, they're all lacking those amino acids, which is a missing link in the diet.
Yeah, Dan, the CEN collagen was probably also developed just to help those dogs that are prone to injuries, like even conditions like hip dysplasia and torn ligaments, because up to 90% of a dog's ligament, tendons, muscles is collagen, and it really plays an important role with that whole connective tissue and the flexibility around that whole structure. So what we found is, like, obviously a raw fed diet is good, but getting a really pure product of the type 1 and type 3 collagens is what we've found the best to rebuild that structure and help even the cartilage at the joint site, because that's mainly a network of collagen as well. So, and the reason why we don't supplement the type 2 is because the dog can make the type 2 out of the type 1 and type 3.
Yeah, I'm definitely, I suppose in the performance dog world, over the last couple of years, we're seeing a lot of shoulder strains, psoas strains as well. Obviously, I encourage people, when they're starting out a exercise program with their dog, obviously they need a good, for me, a good 4 to 6 weeks of adaptation for the ligaments, muscles, tendons, especially when it comes to weight training or pulling, on those particular joints, muscles, tendons, etc. So particularly using something to help with that sort of ticks the boxes.
Well, that's the repair side of things then, as we discussed. So obviously, they need to give it adequate time for the dog to recover, but also those amino acids will be repairing all those, muscle fibers that have been shredded to grow and sort of bigger.
Yeah, For sure. You know, and I suppose, you know, I haven't said it yet, but, you know, I've been using the products. You guys did send me some samples. So I want to make sure that I'm totally transparent about that as well.
Okay.
You know, you
Yeah.
know, that, you know, that I've been using the products, and look, I'm enjoying them, and I will purchase some more products. There's no doubt about that, you know. So, but like
Yep.
today is just about, you know, educating people and getting some hints and tips, not just around your products, about just the whole sort of diet and nutrition and supplement sort of space as well.
Yeah, 100%, Dan. It probably flows into another product of ours, a CEN Active, which does have some collagen in it,
Mhm.
but then also it has the organic turmeric, the rosehip, and gelatin through it as well. And that's aimed at active dogs as well, just to help that obviously structural support, but then also turmeric can help with even pain relief and stiffness with its natural anti-inflammatory effects, and then also the rosehip with the high antioxidant profile and vitamin C.
So you know, even with obviously some of your listeners, if they've been sort of to the vets and, you know, they've tried cortisone or any sort of painkillers, you know, there's side effects associated with, you know, with medication, and obviously, as Brian said, long term, those side effects are going to get worse and worse. So what we're offering is a natural alternative. And look, we're not saying that our product's going to work 100% in every dog, but at least, you know, there's no side effects. And that's where some of the vets have been sort of coming to us and go, look, you know, I've tried all the pharmaceuticals, you know, I'm not getting any results, you know, do you have anything that we could try? Almost like a worst case scenario, because I've tried everything, you know, to possibly help this dog. And look, some of the times it's going to work, other times it's not going to work. It just depends on the dog and what's happened, how long it's been on medication, how old it is. You know, there's many variables there.
Yeah, look, for sure. And sorry, just thing popped into my head as well. Your products, you know, your turmeric and stuff like that, source in, you know, are they? Can you tell us where they're sourced from, as in locally?
No, well, look, we've tried. To be honest with you, turmeric's very difficult to get in Australia. So we use an organic human grade turmeric, which is out of India. The flaxseed meal that we use is out of Australia. We try to source Australia first, but if we can't, obviously we've got to go. You know, we've got to go overseas. But all the ingredients, the rosehip, the turmeric, the collagen, and that they're all human grade. So we don't use any second rate or third rate animal sort of products, which are a lot cheaper. So if we did want to make, you know, like a really big hefty margin, we would, but we wouldn't get the results either. So one thing is we don't compromise on quality, and unfortunately, you know, you got to pay for quality, which is why our products probably, to some people, might be a little bit expensive, but you know, they work.
Look, I agree. And when it comes to, you know, that versus vet bills, or, you know, some of the pharmaceutical products that people are on for the, you know, for extended period of times, I don't believe that, you know, your particular products are expensive compared to some of those pharmaceuticals out there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Stan.
No,
Good point you make.
Yeah, and just one other thing with even those non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, they're driving a particular pathway in the dog for that pain relief, being that COX-2 inhibitor. Turmeric and its action with its curcumin is driving that same pathway in a more natural form. Maybe it's not as acute, but on a day-to-day basis in an active dog, it's going to have some sort of effect through that pathway, depending on genetics and environment and overall diet. But you're not getting that side effect of the membranes drying out, ulcers, being prone to ulcers, because it's preserving the membrane as well, what turmeric, the action of turmeric. So all these medications have been derived from nature and then isolated and played around with that. And they're fantastic short term. If the dog's is in full discomfort, you need to pop that pill for them. But in a long-term view, you've got to look at getting off that and into a natural way.
Yeah.
The point too then is what we try to do is, like with obviously the holistic vets and sort of how we developed our products, we try to get to the cause of the problem, not treat the symptom. So the problem in the industry is, you know, and I'm saying all vets, but you know, the way that a lot of vets are sort of educated is they're not educated to find the problem and to treat it and cure it. It's more like, well, you know, you've got, you know, arthritis, let's just, you know, let's make it, you know, like an anti-inflammatory to dealt with the pain. We're sort of going, well, what's causing that arthritis in a 4-year-old dog? Is it something to do with leaky gut? Is it something to do with, there's an allergy to the chicken in the kibble or the raw? We try to dive deeper on it. You go, well, what's causing all these problems? And let's try to get to the cause of the problem. When we fix the cause, then there's no need for the supplements. There's no need for the, for the extra vet visits. The dog naturally, the body will heal itself. We just got to give it the opportunity.
For sure. And that also, stems down to, as you know, I do dog behavior consults as well, having a look at nutrition from a behavior point of view, separate, that's a whole nother podcast, guys, the separation anxiety and the behavior issues that can potentially be, traced back to forms of nutrition, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, no, 100%, Dan. Even in human health, like serotonin used to be thought of being made at the base of the brain back then. 80, I think it's over 80% is made in the gut. So serotonin is where it's a feel-good hormone, okay? So if your gut health is not optimal, you're not producing enough serotonin, are you feeling loved, or are you feeling that mentally? And day after day, if that's not happening, you're not going to feel your best and you're not going to perform at your best. So that whole gut health is becoming even more important. And even today, it's still under research. There's so much more legwork that all the scientists and that have to get through because it's so complex. But it's really, really nice to see that it's coming to the fore and we can really genuinely help dog health, horse health, human health through understanding that gut.
Yeah, look, I agree. I suppose, this is once again personal opinion, but where have you guys been, and this is personal views, where you are now in your opinion of this, nutrition space, but we'll suppose we'll talk about dogs in particular, and where do you see it sort of going in the next 5 years?
We've seen a huge change in terms of like dog owners not being 100% happy with like how the dog is acting, like like it's like kids on red coil. So gut health, let's say in humans, our gut's connected to the brain through the vagus nerve. So when we have a gut disturbance, our brain is going to be affected with behavior. And obviously, if we're feeding sugary foods to our dogs, we can't expect them not to be running around a little bit crazy. So people want, like, now that sort of dogs are treated as family sort of children and so forth, especially with the elderly population, they want their dog pretty much to be as healthy as what they are. So there's a huge change in terms of feeding more naturally. They're trying to stay away from anything processed. They want education, and that's how we started, obviously, with the podcast. We've got a 6 or 7 on the dog side and almost 30 on the horse side. So education is what people are screaming out for. They're happy to spend the money. The problem is they're getting a different opinion from one company, different from another one. Someone's got a vested interest, these guys don't. So confusion is the biggest problem. So we try to basically go on facts. Well, this is the latest research we're getting from our nutritionist in America. He's been doing this for 45 years. These are the reasons behind it, and this is why we should be doing it. So it's not that Brian and I are trying to invent this. We're seeking out the most intelligent people in the world and picking their brain to try to get this information out Australia-wide, if not around the world, to say, well, this is where the problem is. There's no vested interest in this. This is based on facts. This is based on what naturally a dog has evolved on, and this is what we need to be doing.
Yep. Yeah, look, I agree. And, I think just the response to this podcast in particular, people, sending me stuff from, the UK, the US, so all over the place, tuning in and loving it so far. So I agree there totally that, there's a thirst for education out there right now.
Yeah, 100%, Dan. From my personal perspective of the industry, how it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago to now and then beyond, I think it's really refreshing to have vets call us up and looking at that new way of looking at the overall health of the dog in terms of going a more natural way instead of staying on the medications. And I hope that continues, and then we can get a really good balance of using medication in the acute form and then using all natural sort of better nutrition in a natural way going for your longer term view, and then hopefully reducing the risk of problems later on in life above 10 years old in dogs. And limiting even surgeries and giving their quality of life back in those later years.